Hello and welcome back. We're now a few days removed from free agency, and I want to take a look at the fantasy impact from some of these moves. Now, these are just my initial thoughts and a little bit of data to support some of that, but we're going to talk through some of the biggest moves that happened on July 1st and 2nd and try to work out how that's going to impact fantasy value going forward. So without any further ado, let's just jump right in. So we're going to start it off with guys who potentially have a positive impact coming for them. They've gotten to a better situation, maybe a better team or whatever. We're going to start off with Reilly Smith. He's coming over to the Rangers, potentially playing with Kreider and Zibanejad on that top line. And you can see here on this value overdraft, this is all green, meaning here's his 3-year average right here. And then here's where he was last year. He was a bit of a down year, only 13 goals, cut his goal production in half. So he was really not shooting as much, down to 2 shots per game. You take that back to this previous good season that he had, where he was close to 0.7 points per game, 2.68 shots per game. Goal totals were a little bit higher. Everything was a little bit higher. And then he takes another step down in 22-23 and then takes an even further step down last season. Goal production really fell off a cliff. But now he's coming to a situation where he could be getting top 6 minutes in New York, playing with Kreider and Zibanejad, 2 guys who are struggling 5-on-5 to find somebody to have chemistry with, so he will get a shot there. And even if he doesn't make a huge improvement, he's been trending in a downward direction for the last 2 years, and even if he just reverts back to the mean, that should potentially be good value in a really deep league. If you're in the 160 to 190 range of your draft, that's where I'd try to target Reilly Smith. But another guy that we do have to talk about, former Ranger Anthony Duclair, he's a goal scorer. He's kind of similar to Smith in the sense that they're both known for their goal scoring, but Duclair a little bit more prolific, especially in 21-22, 31 goals, 58 points that season with Florida. Then he gets injured, has a bit of a drop off just because of the fact he wasn't healthy. Comes back last year, only 42 points in 73 games, but 24 of those were goals. So 89th percentile there. Point production is a little bit lower. Shot volume is low. That's not good. And what you like to see is back in 21-22, 2.2 shots per game is a little bit better. The power play numbers were better. He could get some power play time with the Islanders. I would figure that he would get a shot with Barzal and Horvat. They do have a couple of other guys that they could put him with, but if he's with Barzal, he can really move and get him into open space. Duclair can keep up with Barzal, so that's going to be important. And then if he hits this same goal production that he was at, that's about 30 to 35 goal pace, depending on how many games he plays. So that would be the ceiling for Duclair. You can see here this one season dropped his 3-year average. So he is a little bit of an overdraft risk just because of this 1 year, but he is pretty much right where he was the past couple of years in terms of 64, 65, 63, in that range in terms of completeness rating. So I could see him taking a little bit of a bump, but you're getting a goal scorer who's coming to a new situation. The Islanders definitely need goal scoring. So this could be an opportunity for him to find some chemistry with Barzal. And if that happens, he could see a little bit of an uptick in production. Speaking of upticks in production, the Boston Bruins finally get their center to replace Bergeron and Krejci. Obviously not going to be the same caliber player, but has that ceiling, I guess, in terms of 21-22 when he was with Calgary, a point per game player. And when we look at his file from that season, point per game, half a goal per game. So incredible goal pace, 42 goals on the season. The assists were there. The shot volume close to 3 shots per game is really nice. And the power play production was there as well. Now, obviously, that dropped off in 22-23 when a lot of those guys left. There's the mass exodus out of Calgary, and then eventually he ends up getting traded to Vancouver, and then his production continues to slip, as you can see here, from a 78 down to a 74. He does hit a little bit, which is nice to see. Blocks a couple shots. The shot volume has not tailed off to a crazy extent. He's down to 2.3, but that's not bad at all. The goal numbers should come up, but more importantly, the assist numbers. Playing with Pastrnak potentially could be an excellent opportunity for him. I'm imagining he's going to get overdrafted just because of the fact that he's getting that seat with Pastrnak on the first line. But if he does slide past the 7th or 8th round in a 12-team league, that would be where I would probably start to look at him. He does have some value baked in just because he is a little bit of a, on a dip from year to year, and he could revert to the mean that he's been putting up, and that could potentially be some value for you. And then on top of that, you have this garden seat with Pastrnak to potentially boost him even further. So this is a guy I'll be keeping my eye on a little bit deeper in the draft. But another guy that we do have to talk about going the other way, there was a lot of movement In terms of Vancouver and Boston, a lot of guys going from one team to the other, not necessarily because of trades, but Jake Debrusk going to Vancouver. You can see this here, this 1 year back, 22-23. That was the year that he kind of took off and had really good goal numbers, 95th percentile there. That is around a 34, 35 goal pace over an 82-game season. He only played 64 games, so he hit 27, but 50 points in those 64 games, good for 0.78 points per game. Almost 3 shots per game is what you like to see as well. And he does hit. The hitting 1.3 hits per game is nice if you're in a bangers league. Now, obviously, all of that dropped off last year, except for the hitting. The hitting stayed there. The shot blocking is pretty similar. The shot volume dropped, but not fell off a cliff. So if he can bump that shot total up maybe half a shot per game and play with guys like Pettersson maybe on that second line, that could be an interesting line assignment for him. And you know that he likes to hit, he likes to shoot and score goals. So those are some factors that you're going to want in your points league if you get waiting for hits, shots, goals, things like that. I don't necessarily see him getting a ton of power play time, but he has been a power play producer in the past, 14 power play points, 6 power play goals that one season where he broke out. So this could be a nice value play. Again, kind of a middle of the range draft, 7th, 8th round plus if you're in a 12-team league. I wouldn't take him too early just because it is a guy going to a new team, playing on the West Coast for the first time. All that travel could be a little bit of an adjustment period for him. Now, another guy that I wanted to talk about is not a guy who moved on free agency day, and that is Seth Jones. But the reason we're talking about him, Chicago loaded up. So they added a number of guys, but mainly the guys that I want to focus on are Bertuzzi and Teravainen. Teravainen is a really good power play and special teams guy in general. And then you bring in Bertuzzi, could be a net front guy on the power play. Seth Jones has been drafted in recent years because of his shot blocking and a little bit of his hitting. But he is the power play quarterback with that power play featuring Bedard on one side. Now you bring in some reinforcements in the form of these guys. Plus you have Mikheyev coming over and some depth guys. So this could be an opportunity to go out and grab a power play quarterback defenseman who may slide under the radar just a little bit. Now, obviously, if you're in a plus-minus league, you cannot draft this guy. Minus 37, minus 38, minus 15. You're not going to want any of that on your roster. But I would see these point totals improving with the added talent. It's maybe not going to be the most dynamic power play you've ever seen, but it should take an uptick. So this could be one of the few defensemen that you could potentially get a bump out of just because of the fact that they're improving their entire team and he's the power play quarterback, pretty much solidified at this point until they get Levshunov into the lineup, or if Korchinski can take that spot or somebody else. But for the time being, it is Seth Jones, so this could be an opportunity. He is a shot volume guy, which is nice to see as well. So shots, hits, and blocks, this could be a perfect third defenseman in a categories league or a points league. Now, up to the guys that I'm a little bit more excited about, Victor Arvidsson, and we'll also talk about Jeff Skinner going to the Edmonton Oilers. Now, Arvidsson actually had a pretty good per game file here. So 0.83 points per game, shot volume above 3 shots per game. He is a shooter, so that's what you like to see. He's coming over to the Oilers. He's going to play with Draisaitl or McDavid or Nugent Hopkins, so he will get the puck from those guys. He is a shot volume guy, so that's good to see. And that could potentially mean an uptick in goals. Now, he has scored some goals in the past, 20 and 66, 26 and 77. If we look at that on a per game level, kind of right where he is, 90th percentile in goal production. So you would expect him to stay in that range at the very least, if not take a slight uptick. The power play will be interesting. I don't think he makes it onto that first power play unit, so he actually could drop if you're looking at just the power play numbers coming off the board here. That could potentially drop, but in addition to the power play numbers dropping, I would expect to see a little bit of a bump in both of these categories. And then obviously you want that shot volume on your team most of the time. He does hit a little bit, but the hits, he was dealing with injuries last year. The hits were not really existent. So as we turn to Skinner, this is a little bit of a different file just because he did have really good success with Tage Thompson on that first line with Alex Tuck back in the years past. So that was the year where he took his most noticeable improvement here up to a 68. So as we look at that season, you can see the goal production, 96th percentile. He was over a point per game, so 82 points in 79 games, 35 goals, 47 assists, a bunch of shots, over 3 shots per game that season, 21 power play points, 8 power play goals. A lot of this is stuff that you want. but he's been a 30 goal scorer even when he wasn't at his peak. So this is a guy who last year put up 24 goals. You can see now he dropped off, but not that much, to an 89th percentile goal scorer. So he's still going to get those goal opportunities playing with the guys that I just mentioned. And then on top of that, the shot volume should still be there. You're not getting any hits or blocks out of him, and you're not going to expect that. And I would not expect any power play time for Jeff Skinner. Maybe power play 2. Maybe him and Arvidsson are both on power play 2, and I doubt that they use that unit any more than last year. They still have that number 1 unit with Bouchard and all the top end talent that they have up front. So I wouldn't expect the power play numbers to be there, but everything else should be. It could be a little bit of an overdraft situation where a lot of people are seeing this and kind of fading these guys, or you should fade these guys because they're going to go super, super high in the draft. But if they do fall to you in that 7th, 8th round range in a 12-team league, that's where I would start to target both Skinner and Arvidsson. Arvidsson's been one of my favorite guys to add off the waiver wire for the last couple of years. I doubt I'll be able to get him off the waiver wire this year, so you might have to plan for that. But the number one guy who took a positive jump based on all of the news on July 1st is Tommy Novak. So if he gets that seat with playing in the middle with Stamkos and Marchessault, both 40-goal scorers coming over and playing with him, he's been a guy who can dish the puck. He can put up some points, 43 points in 51 games in 22-23, 45 points in 71 last year, kind of the same exact numbers, but just in a lot more games. So 20 more games. So the per game numbers came down a bit, but the raw totals stayed the same. But when he was at his best, all of these numbers are really ownable. So 91st percentile point per game, 89th in goals, 89th in assists, 87th in power play. Again, this is another one of those teams where I don't think they're going to make too many changes on the power play. Philip Forsberg was incredible last year. They will probably keep that Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist line together. They had some really good chemistry, and all three of them put up good seasons. So that will mean, hopefully, Tommy Novak gets the garden seat with Stamkos and Marchessault. Obviously, we need them to have some chemistry right off the bat. But if they start to play together in training camp and you see those signs of them clicking or that he's sticking with those two guys, this would be one of the main beneficiaries of the free agent period because they're bolstering their roster. They added Brady Shea. They bring in these two 40-goal scorers. They already had a pretty good defense, even though they lost McDonough. They just locked up UC Saros. They were a playoff team, so they can do it again. They have extra, goal scoring coming in. So this could be a nice situation in fantasy. If you're looking for some value, he doesn't have a lot of name value, so he may not be on other people's radar if they're not astute fantasy hockey players. So this would be a guy I would look to pick up. Now, in terms of negative impact, there's only really one or two guys that I wanted to touch on, and they are both playing for the same team. So Seattle. Brandon Montour comes over to Seattle. Obviously, his best season was this season right back here, 73 points in 80 games, a ton of shots. So as we pull that up, that's already here. So you got the 3 shots per game average, which is crazy. You've got the .41 power play points per game, 98th percentile there. The assists were off the charts that year. He was hitting a little bit and getting some shot blocks. Then you take a little bit of a dump last year. He was hurt for the first part of the season. Shot volume is not bad at all at 2.5 shots per game. Power play numbers are still good, but they're dropping from where they were. Hits are pretty good there at 69th percentile. Blocks are still pretty good there. But now he's going to a team where Vince Dunn was the power play quarterback. So as we look at Dunn's file, a lot of his production was coming in terms of power play assists. You can see 94th percentile in assists, 92nd percentile in power play. Only, I would imagine, one of these two guys is going to quarterback that first power play unit. Maybe they do use 2 units and they can split these guys up and get a little bit of production. But you can see here, both of these guys who are 92nd percentile or better in power play production, they're going to have to drop just because of the ice time. So that's the one negative impact. Both are still good players. Both should still put up some points. I would prefer Montour just for the shot volume and the hitting that he does, in terms of trying to pick one of these two guys to target in fantasy. But Vince Dunn is probably not as appealing of an option as he was 2 years ago, certainly not as appealing as last year, and this is why. He's just going to share the power play time. And obviously the plus minus was great that one season where he took off and had 64 points in 81 games. It came down a bit last year. They added a little bit of goal scoring, but they didn't add a ton of goal scoring. Chandler Stevenson's not the most productive player. He's good. He's not bad, but They didn't add a Stamkos. They didn't add somebody like that, Gensel or anybody like that to kind of bolster their offense, which they desperately needed. So I don't necessarily see the offensive numbers ticking up, and I do see the power play numbers trending downward. Now, I will do a separate video on the goaltending. There's a lot to talk about in terms of goaltending. We're going to end this one here, and as always, I will see you in the next one.